it's not super smooth. Star Trek Into Darkness countdown continues with Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. I love this movie. This is I was going to say this is up there with my most watched of the Star Trek films, but that's actually totally not true, because I went through a period of rewatching the Next Generation films. But regardless, I've watched this one a lot. So Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan came out in 1982, and stars Ricardo Montalban as Khan, plus the entire regular cast of Star Trek, the original series, and from the motion picture. And I feel like with this one, I feel like they really got it. Like, they really reeled people back in. It's funny, actually, going back and watching the Star Trek, the motion picture, I was, you know, today, if that had happened, what had happened with that film today happened, I wonder if they would come out with a sequel. Because it was so different, I think, than what people expected. So much more like hard sci-fi, a lot slower paced. And then with Star Trek II, I'm like, this is what I expect from Star Trek. You have camaraderie between the characters, more comic relief, and just a great story. And you get a lot of times with the characters, as opposed to sometimes when there's sort of like personal struggles with characters, you feel like, but I just, you know, when you only get to see one of the movies once every couple of years, you're like, I just want to see the character. I just want to, you know, like, I'm all for change, but, you know, in series, I think we have more of a chance, TV series, we have more of a chance for ebb and flow with characters. Once every couple of years, you want to see the character as the character, and that's one of the things that we really get. And ironically, there actually is some character development in this film, especially with Captain Kirk, because they very clearly address the idea of, you know, what happens when your life purpose and your age get kind of wonky, which I think is a very relevant theme, and is in some ways not the predominant theme of the film, because it's about the wrath of Khan, you know, has a big conflict, you know, action-y drive to it, but there's a lot of heart behind it, and for me that's such a great combination. Now, for me, it's almost hard to review this film because I know it so well, I remember it so well, it's such an iconic part of Star Trek history, both to the original series and then beyond, and it's one that I'm really happy to see that actually also holds relevance to the, you know, reboot of Star Trek, starting with the 2009 film, and I think from that perspective can be easily accessible and appreciated by newer fans who weren't, say, fans of the original series. For someone who comes as a fan of the original series and remembers seeing this movie when it was new, it was so nice, you know, because it's like years and years and years. Like, I only remember the original series from reruns, so to get something new was like, ah! And then for it to be so good, it was like, ah! And this movie, like, it scares me. It still scares me. The moments that creep me out still creep me out. I might think of them in a more technical level, as like, is that makeup, is that effects, whatever. That doesn't mean I'm not like, like, I'm still doing that, like, you know, like, and that's sort of to turn that, like, creepy moment off. So there's a, you know, it has those kinds of levels. It has really powerful, sort of theatrical level moments, and a lot of that is the interplay between Captain Kirk and Khan. And Ricardo Montalban as Khan is just, he's so over the top, but it's the character. It's true to the character, and it works, and it's the reason why you see impressions. And actually, often when people are, the whole big thing with Khan is often, you know, Captain Kirk, you know, with parts of reactionary and stuff, but still, it's like without, you know, it's part and parcel. You need both pieces to make that magic work. And of course, the rest of the crew we get more of, I felt like, in this film. And then they also introduced a new character with Saavik, with Kirstie Alley, which I always forget. Every time this movie starts, I forget that Kirstie Alley's in this movie. And she's great. It's actually, I think, one of the few times they've done that, and it just really works. Like, she just feels like a part of Starfleet. Like, she just feels like, you know, the first one I felt there was so much tension in the motion picture with the newer characters, and this really worked. The structure they created in the story to support why she's there and who she is and stuff like that, it just worked. And that's one of the things I actually appreciate and almost forget, because I just like this movie, so I was just, I'm like, I'm gonna watch Wrath of Khan. But like, I'm like, wow, this is actually excellent storytelling with really good acting, with themes that are classically accessible, relevant themes, which is actually one of the things that I consider makes a film a classic, is that if it's timelessly relevant. So it's actually always the opposite of zeitgeist. But it's not the only determination in a classic. And I don't mean classic like a 30s film is a classic. I mean like you can watch it at any time and gain something from it. So wow, diverting into what the definition of a classic is. It's not what I meant to do. Anyway, so but just because I enjoy it, sometimes I forget how good it is. Because I can like movies that aren't good. And of course now I can't think of an example of a not good movie that I like. There's tons of them, but anyway, but this movie, it's good. So, it, you know, repeat watching really holds up. And it was so funny when I was watching it, I was like all set to do this whole thing about how, before I started watching it, I was all set to do this whole thing about why this film is an argument of why you don't have to plant the seed, you know, in a film to create a really good sequel, right? Because the seed of this film is not in Star Trek the motion picture. So, but unfortunately, as I was like all excited about it and watching the movie, I realized that that's true, but it isn't. There's another part of that that actually sort of discounts it, which I won't say because, you know, just in case you haven't seen the film, it could definitely be a spoiler. So it's funny because it is, in the way, it is an argument, but it's a very, you know, making the argument, I'd probably lose the argument, but that doesn't mean I don't think it's a relevant point that you don't have to plant the seed. I'm a real big, I really hate at the end of the movie having a seed to the next film, because I want to enjoy this film as one piece. And if it's part of a bigger puzzle, that's great, but I don't want to be left hanging. TV shows are a little bit different. I also actually don't like it, but if you only have to wait a week, that's one thing. If you have to wait a whole season, that's, you know, another. Anyway, but that's, I think, sometimes it's a stylistic choice. I get why people do it. I understand, like, you know, cliffhangers, but this, on a film, I'm like, you know, a lot of times you don't know. And even if you think you know, you may not know. Things might change. Casting things happen. You know, people's lives change. You know, I like to watch a film as a complete piece. And so there is a pro and con argument with Wrath of Khan. So, and it's just so weird because I'm like, I really have seen this movie so much. I don't technically, like, I don't actually remember going to the theater and watching it, but there's no way I didn't. Like, my family just, we love Star Trek, so I'm sure I saw all the films, with the exception of the motion picture. And I'm sure other people in my family saw them. Like, it just was a part of the culture. I remember having this on VHS. It was one of the first VHSs I had. I thought I still had it. I actually went and looked for it, but unless I put my duplicate VHS tape somewhere else, I might have actually got rid of it, which would have been pretty surprising. It was actually pretty worn. I had watched it a fair amount of times. And this is actually an extended director's edition, but I did not notice that. Like, I didn't notice what was different. So that was a little surprising. It's just under 2 hours. Doesn't feel like it, but it's just, the story is so good. The story is so good. And I was actually, again, rewatching it now, revisiting it now, I realized, wow, it really does hold up. And it really, I think it can play to new fans, which is always exciting, is a sort of, I think, as a sort of added bonus. I don't think you have to do that. And obviously this movie was made 82, 92, 2002. Wow, 31 years ago. Wow! I wonder if they had any idea that 31 years later we would be still getting more Star Trek films. I don't know. Anyway, so I loved it, obviously. It is in my top films. This is really bad. I was going to say, yeah, it's apparently my 39th favorite film of all time. I have a list of 200. It's not, I gotta fix that up. There's not some, I didn't mean to talk about that. I don't know if I'm going to share my list of 200, but apparently it's my 39th favorite film of all time. There is some up and downs in the middle there, so it's in the probably 20s to 30s, or in the 30s probably. So, but it, you know, and it probably is my favorite of the Star Trek films. I would be surprised. I would be surprised if in this rewatch that something would trump The Wrath of Khan. There's something so special about this movie that that really, really works for me. It's just perfect amalgamation. And it obviously has a lasting power. My brother-in-law actually went as Khan to a recent convention, and I'll put a link below. You can see him on stage in his Khan outfit, and he looks amazing. Amazing. He worked really hard on it, and he looks really great. And so that's Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. I'm going to leave links below for other people that are playing along. Sean from MediaAssault, hey! And Brian from the Movie Freak 226. Hey, he's actually going really fast. He might even be done by this point. And go check them out and see what they thought of The Wrath of Khan. And there's still lots of time if you want to jump on board and rewatch all the films. Just let me know. I'd be happy to share links and check out your reviews. So be back next week with the third in the film. I won't say what the title is just in case. It's not my favorite. Next one is not my favorite. Alright, until then, thanks so much for watching.